let's jump in. I'm here with my guest, Rich DeVarti. And Rich, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for almost 20 years now.
Has it been that long?
It has been that long. What I found in doing these podcasts is I keep aging myself and dating myself over and over again. But that's okay. I'm proud
Just
of it.
seems like yesterday
So
when you were working here.
that's exactly right. The reason we met was because you were kind enough to give me employ here for a summer and a fall football season, where I learned a ton, and I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about the industry and working. But I also really developed a passion for just like the history of Ann Arbor, and that was, I was 18, 19 at the time. And there's so much history that comes out of Dominick's. And we're here at Dominick's right now in the back patio, one of the coolest places in Ann Arbor to sit and hang out on a Saturday afternoon or a football Saturday. And I remember you telling me so many great stories about the history about your dad, Dominick, and just some of the history of Ann Arbor that's steeped in here. And so I was wondering if you'd do me the honor of telling a couple of these stories that I have retold time and time again, and has been actually a big inspiration for me in doing this podcast, was telling some of these stories you've told me over and over again, and loving to tell them, and thinking like there are other stories out there that I want to tell, but specifically your stories and your family stories I wanted to put out there. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about Dominick's back in the day, when there was actually another location, and how that came to be.
Sure. Rishi, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm honored that you wanted to interview me for your podcast. And so Dominick's has been around in the family for about 60 years now. My mom and dad, Dominick and Alice, purchased this building, one building here on the block, in late 1959. So we usually say Dominick's has been around since 1960 because that was the first full year.
Got it.
So we've been here almost 60 years now.
Right.
And it's kind of eclectic and iconic with a really unique atmosphere.
Absolutely.
And it's expanded over time. There have been changes, but people remark frequently how nothing's changed. It's always the same, when they come back many years later.
It's a comfort, I think, for a lot of people.
It's changed, it's expanded, but we've always tried to keep the atmosphere the same, the look and feel the same.
Yeah.
Hence, no televisions, more of an atmosphere conducive to conversation.
Sure.
We have a very diverse clientele. People come here, people from all walks of life. Families come, University of Michigan clerical workers,
right.
Sports teams, just a lot of students as well.
Yep.
And professors. So we have a lot of regulars, customers, and some customers that actually come almost every day, which is what you want to do, is develop a clientele that's dedicated. So Dominick's remained in one building in the 60s till probably the mid to late 70s is when we made our major expansion. But during the 60s, I recall when I was really young, my memory isn't that great anymore, but maybe I'll guess I was about 10 years old.
Okay.
When
can't blame you. That's long. No one remembers anything when they're 10.
My father decided to sell our other Dominick's unit that was on Cross Street in Ypsilanti to Tom and Jim Monahan. And I vaguely remember my dad training them on how to mix the pizza sauce and put the spices in and make the dough in the dough machine and roll out the pizzas and make pizzas. And so the Monahans purchased my father's store in Ypsilanti. And for a while they kept the name Dominick's. And back then we used to deliver before we sold the one in Ypsilanti. And we had these little Jeeps, and my father decided to stop delivery.
So they were delivering way back then before
we were delivering from here.
You were delivering from here as well. Oh wow!
And we had Jeeps.
Oh wow!
So we sold the Ypsilanti unit to the Monahan brothers. And for a while, they kept the name Dominick's until my father asked them if they could change it.
And did you think he asked him to change it because, at a certain point, people knew this place is Dominick's and he wasn't involved there anymore?
Well, people were coming and saying that the pizza is different
Okay.
there than
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So somewhere in the process, when my father taught them the way we made it here, it got changed a little bit. And so, some people were saying, oh, the pizza's different there than it is here. And we registered the name Dominick's, and then my father asked Tom Monahan to change the name. Tom bought his brother Jim out of his share of the business. And when he changed the name to Domino's Pizza, I think there was a lawsuit from Domino Sugar.
That's right.
But since the products are so different, that he was able to maintain the name of Domino's. He didn't have to change that. And then I don't know how it came about, but he decided to franchise.
Yeah.
And so now there are Domino's pizzas all over the world.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that I think it's a secret that very few people know about. This idea that what we think of as one of the largest pizza chain in the world. We know that that came from Ann Arbor, but the fact that it came from Dominick's, and I always tell,
Yes,
and I tell
the
the
first
story.
Domino's pizza store was formerly a Dominick's.
Dominick's. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so when you look at this place and you think it's, you feel comfort in coming back and things haven't changed, but it actually has inspired huge change, and huge revolution in industry. And I think I always look back on that, and that's how, you can stay true to your roots, but still inspire huge change, right? And you talked about things have changed, but a lot has stayed the same, but it's also inspired a lot of change, even not just with that, but a lot of the people that come through here and then, have fond memories and recollections and great times, and then go on and do different things. So I love that story. I think the fact that two brothers, were learned how to make pizza from your dad, and then some years later, turned it into something else, but started here. I love that. Another story that I think I always look back on fondly is I remember us being upstairs and you telling me the story about these beautiful glass windows that anybody that's listening can still go up and see now. I was wondering if you tell the story about those windows.
Oh, sure. My father wanted to decorate the business when we were expanding in the late 1970s, and he loved stained glass and he loved colored glass, and he wanted to make the place look really pretty. So at some point, I believe it was at an auction, there were these glass pieces that were for sale, and there were the glass pieces that came from the dome of the Capitol building in Lansing.
Huh.
And at some point, I believe the structure got too old and weak to support the weight of the glass. And this is like lead crystal glass, really thick, really heavy, big pieces, several of them acid etched that it's my understanding were made in France many, many years ago.
Wow.
And nowhere in the world do they make stuff like that anymore.
Right.
And my father acquired several pieces, and the man who he got them from, who I do not recall his name, told my father that he was standing at the bottom of a chute and trying to grab the glass, wearing gloves, as it was sliding down this chute into a dumpster. And he was salvaging and saving these miraculous antique pieces of glass. And we were able to acquire several, and the gentleman had more, and my father wanted more, so he sent me up north in a little pickup truck to this gentleman's house. It was near Traverse City, and I loaded a whole lot more onto the truck and brought him back to Ann Arbor.
Wow.
And shortly after we had them installed upstairs in the seating area on the second floor, some people from the state came to photograph them, and measure them, and they wanted to make some replicas for the dome in Lansing. They wanted to make some replicas that were made of material that was much lighter,
Right.
that the structure would support.
So they came to
So someone has told me that somewhere in the Capitol building there's a little plaque on the wall that actually mentions that some of the originals are here.
I've heard
on
that
site
when you take a
in
tour of
Dominick.
the Capitol building, they actually mention that too, that these are not the original pane glass windows, and that the only other originals that they know of are here at Dominick's in Ann Arbor, which is great. It's a way to infiltrate Lansing a little bit over here. So, as you've seen so many changes, you know, and obviously you growing up here and then working here under your dad for a long time and then taking over, and you know, we have high rises going up all around us on Southview, and as things have changed, you know, would you say that, you know, you take pride in comfort, like giving that comfort that this place is still here and still has that same look and feel that people have loved and
Yes, I do. And what's really touching is when customers return to Dominick's and haven't been here in a long time, and they're just really happy, and they have stories too, like, oh, this is where I met my wife. This is where I got engaged.
Yeah.
You know, things like that, and all the compliments we get on our food really makes it all worthwhile. You know.
I remember bringing my kids here and telling them that this is where I learned how to make pizza, which was fairly impressive to them. They were pretty proud of that. So at least impress them for a little bit anyway. So, well, Rich, like I said, I think this is a place I've always liked stories and facts and history, but you know, when I look back, obviously I remember you and we and my coworkers that were here, but it's the stories, it's the tradition that is steeped in this place that I always like kind of like washes over me. It's very nostalgic. You know, I try to come by at least once a year if I, you know, to come and hang out, especially with the family. So when we started the podcast, it was like you were the first person I thought of that I wanted to have on here. So thank you so much for taking time and telling a few stories. And
Sure.
I'm excited for other people to hear it. And hopefully, like I was telling you earlier, I'm excited for them to come up and check out the windows and tell the stories to their friends about this place.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.